WindowMirror. Welcome to our demo event tonight. We are going to hash out we're going to hash out the details today in 2 hours. We're going to get through all of them. No, we're going to see 4 actual examples of companies and products that are doing blockchain. So no more reading white papers and just talking about it. We're going to see it in action. I am Chad West. I'm the Director of Sales at Coherent Solutions, and I will be your MC tonight. And, I'd like to thank all of you for coming tonight. I know it's hard to get out of work and get out of your busy lives to make it here. It's really important that we get together on this topic. We need to really support each other in this effort because we're at a critical juncture in technology. We started with the Internet of Information. I was in junior high. Google was the best, right from the beginning, right? And we eventually moved into the Internet of Things. Maybe we're kind of still in the middle of that, arguably. And today, right now, we are at the dawn of the Internet of Value. There's a lot of parts to that. And I'll give you a few, benefits to it. I think a big important part is the decentralization of computing and how that is going to lower our transaction costs and increase the transaction speeds, which is awesome. The authentication and control of our data, this is my favorite part, is going to really increase the trust that we have with one another, both commercially and civically. And I think that's going to have a huge positive impact in our lives. Tokens are going to be the glue of our collaboration. So I know we were expecting a lot more people, but I want you all to look at each other and remember that tonight, despite the numbers, we can have a big impact together. Remember that blockchain is a team sport. It's across industries, technologies, and use cases. So let's listen to each other. Let's start conversations. Please continue those conversations afterwards. Build partnerships, coalitions, and plans with one another. And let's put 612, let's put Minneapolis, St. Paul metropolitan area on the blockchain map. How does that sound? All right, fantastic. Okay, great. So, important housekeeping items. I think everyone got the memo, but there's pizza outside. Is it good? Fantastic. Okay, awesome. Great. You'll have 2 beer tickets. So you have 3 tickets, 1 for pizza and the rest for beer. Any unused tickets can come to me, please. So, thank you. Okay. And at the very end, please take our survey. There's a QR code at the bottom right-hand corner of your hand. Should take about 5 minutes. Would appreciate it. Let's get going. Let's see some stuff in action. We have 4 demos and demonstrations today. The first one is going to be presented by Tammy Holtz. of Coherent Solutions. If you don't know, Coherent Solutions is a software product development and consulting company. So essentially, we're involved heavily in innovation. So, need to be on top of things and be able to show off what we know. And we'll talk more about that later. As I introduce the demoers, I'm going to add a little bit information about their personal lives, because all of us who are involved in blockchain have other lives too. Blockchain is kind of a second job. In Cammy's case, we're all very impressed at the office about her participation in ultra marathons. Okay. I shouldn't have asked that.
What's an ultra marathon?
100 miles?
50. Yeah?
My favorites are they're done.
Wow.
Okay.
Really a lot of it.
And 2 Ironmen. Yeah, and two, just 2.
Just 2. I found out I hate swimming and I just want to get to the run. That's the ultra.
Nice. I think part of that energy is why Cammy's been a leader in blockchain in her company. So please welcome Cammy and her presentation of smart parking.
Okay, so hi everybody. So I'm Cammy Holtz. So my role at Coherent is really delivery. So I have 2 clients right now that we are helping them build out their product. So one of the solutions is built on Ethereum and smart contract, and another is in the finance industry, and they're doing a private permissioned blockchain influence platform. And so really at Coherent, what we're trying to do is build our capabilities and knowledge around blockchain. And so our team, we have a team in Minsk, Belarus. We have a research and development group there, and we're doing a lot of innovation. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was look at a use case and use some additional technologies. So this demo, what we're doing, so this parking lot here is actually in our company in Minsk, Belarus. And to kind of give you the backstory of this, is that you can see how the car is blocking the other cars. I mean, it's a very busy parking lot, and this is shared. So you have 3 different organizations, as you'll see in the scenario, that are all trying to share one space. And so the key to this was really being able to develop some trust and some transparency across, and also develop really good parking citizens. Because right now, if you want to move your car and you're being blocked, you got to find that person. That's kind of problem to solve, right? So we're going to automate that and create a solution so that people can get notified, as well as be able to give visibility to everybody as far as who's kind of a good corporate citizen, and reward that behavior so we can influence it. So we'll start the demo. That will rent the primary organization. All of these using the same parking lot. As I mentioned, you want to pause for a second. This is all built on Hyperledger Fabric. So which is the whole purpose around that is it's the right forum from a blockchain platform perspective for a permissioned blockchain, which is what we're looking to do here. And so if you kind of look at our network here, the way it all comes together. On the very top, you have the head organization. Everybody has a certificate of authority, and that's how we establish the trust and authentication. So if you're in part of this network, you have to have you have to have a public key. Okay, you have to have your own certification authority. The order node. So people are familiar with the node structure. So the order node is the one that really drives it. So all of these peers are running chain code, which if you're more familiar with Ethereum, that is really the smart contract piece. So they run the code, and the order, they validate the code, it gets pushed back to the order, and the order actually then pushes back the blocks. So that's really the flow here, and the channel is how they all communicate together. Once it's been validated, it gets pushed to the ledger, and they each of course, from the distributed network, have a ledger on their in their network. Going to show you kind of our architecture. So all of the cars, all the devices, they have a sensor. That sensor, when they move in, is picked up by the MPTT, pushed through IoT. So that's where it's recognized. That's our raw data gateway. Then move back a second. Sorry. We'll just walk through that really briefly. It gets pushed to Lambda. By the way, it's AWS IoT in Lambda. And then it gets cleaned, and that data, once it's kind of formatted, that's what gets pushed to the blockchain. And then it can get pushed to their mobile device. The one thing I want to share here is some of these futuristic things are things that we're kind of looking for additional ways to add to this platform. So one is with the S3, so we can go right from IoT and we can have raw data storage if required. Looking to do some behavioral pattern detection and free slot recommendations for the users, as well as some analytical and operational features as well. Right now we don't have the reporting built in, but that would be a phase 2. So we wrote this chain code snippet. All this is really showing you is this is basically what is the code that is behind. This is the smart contract. So all of the device IDs, all of the arguments, all of the logic is in this. And it's based on a version. So anytime you upgrade this, that also has to get approved, and everybody has visibility to what version you are. So that's kind of the essence, right, of blockchain. Any changes that are made are logged, and you would see. You can see all the spaces and flying through headlands. Lots and lots of code. Okay, so case 1, a car arrives to the parking lot. Notified, and then it goes through the flow, right? Into the blockchain, where it's recognized over here. Channels updated, the peers all validate the code of the transaction. The order pushes it back to and gets it added to the ledger. And this is just the code that kind of shows that it'll run through my chain code, which is basically the smart contract. So this is really the smart contract executing at this time. And in the middle, it kind of shows the functions I'm going through. There you go. So you've got your card ID, the date timestamp. Case 2. So we have preferred spaces. So for preferred space, really what that means. So you get, if you're a good citizen, you get karma. And karma points will give you a preferred space for 30 days. And so that's kind of how you get some priority within the system is by driving your karma. Now in this case, basically what we're going to see is somebody decides, well, I'm just going to see what happens if I park even though I don't have a karma established and I don't have a preferred spot. Checks your spot, and then realizes, oh, yeah, I can't park here. Sorry, gotta leave. And if you ignore that, then there's other repercussions, not to mention your karma is decreased, which means that you could lose your parking privileges altogether. Same process, all of it gets validated. It's a valid transaction, the message got sent to her, and the data is stored in the ledger. Now these messages are also stored in the ledger again because we want to have visibility and transparency to what people are doing. So that transaction where she's actually getting an alert that's saying she's parking in a preferred spot is tracked. So everybody's seeing who's behaving correctly and who is not within the system. Phase 3, kind of what I talked about before. People can park behind you, just keep it going. And so this is really just to be able to notify people, hey, you're kind of blocking me, I don't want to leave. There's a 10-minute window, so you are required to remove your car within 10 minutes. If you don't, again, car will decrease. But in this case, this person gets the notification, please move your car so I can leave. Got it, and I'll move. And then that message goes out to the next user, and they know that they can now move their car. Shows on their phone, I'm free, and off I go. This is just how it is. Again, gets updated. Goes from the phone, he gets notified, back to the ledger. So in the last scenario, this kind of shows you this is just showing you again the post pivot to update. That space is now free in the ledger. Okay. I'm going to fast forward to this piece because we're running out of time. I want to make sure I'm considerate of our other demos. So the next one, since we consider this to be our source of truth, if for any reason one of the sensors was default, it worked correctly and there's already something in the space, so it's picking something up. But this next scenario is going to show, so the sensor picks something up, and this is thought it saw a car, and there was something already there. We go through the same validation steps. The peers would look at, would do the validation, they would see that they're based on what's in the ledger today, there's a car sitting there. So a warning would go out, and it would not update the ledger. So the ledger will always remain the source of truth. And this is just showing through that update. So again, this is really just one scenario. You can see how that can be applied in different venues, different situations. But at the end of the day, the key here is this can be used to kind of bring organizations together to provide transparency and trust, right? Yeah, this is just showing there's a car that arrived, space shows already full. It just stops there. The space has already been contained, so it doesn't push to the ledger.
Yes, sir.
With the identifiers you're creating fictitious names, is there any way to identify that individual with that fictitious name on other interactions within the blockchain? Can they have that fictitious name carry through?
Can they have that fictitious name carried through? One more time.
You use naming on the car parking experiment. If they become involved in another social experience or another business experience, can they carry that fictitious name further in the blockchain? Is there some identifier with that fictitious name that they can carry it and carry it and carry it?
Like, is it like an avatar, perhaps, that can float into other decentralized ecosystems or something?
In this case, no, because this is enclosed. I mean, this is no. So all of the IDs are contained within this system. In this case, yep.
But he brings up a good concept, which is self-sovereign identity, which is
Yes.
definitely in play in the blockchain space. So yeah.
Yeah, so even, you know, with some of our other clients, when that comes more into play, at least from the public perspective, you do have to, that it could essentially carry over, and that's what sovereignty comes into play. But this is more, Hyperledger Fabric is more for enterprise, and so it's going to be more that private permissions, so it's contained within.
Is there some tokenization or incentivization data built around the Hyperledger token model, or how is that? Oh, thanks.
I'm just curious about tokenization. Are they building on top of the Hyperledger as their own token, or are they looking at their karma points more as the incentive you need regardless of token?
In this circumstance, they're just looking at incentive for this particular account.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So can you briefly touch base about what's the client's requirements that drives your choice of using blockchain?
What really drove this one was more the trust, right? They wanted the full transparency and everybody to be able to see what's, be able to have visibility to the actual contract itself. So each party doesn't necessarily trust each other. They've got one parking lot to share. Who really gets to decide what's preferred? So they all wanted to be able to have validation of the actual smart contract and visibility to how that's being managed. There will be a payment structure as well that plays into this later, because if you saw an organization, right, that isn't in place quite yet as far as into the blockchain, but that also will come into play to make sure that the fee structure is appropriate as well.
Any features of Hyperledger that make you choose it as your blockchain as opposed to using another blockchain?
That's a great question. In this case, to be honest with you, we just had, so keep in mind from a Coherent perspective, what we do is we work with other customers, right? And there's been a lot of interest in Hyperledger. So we really wanted to, for this particular one, we wanted to use an enterprise model. We were looking to do the private permissions. That was kind of what we were looking to do from a learning and R&D perspective. And so that's why we went with Hyperledger. It was more just to learn more about the capabilities.
We have about 30 seconds. We'll go on.
All the best. I'm just curious about, from kind of a behavioral perspective of, it sounds like there's, karma and then there's incentives.
Yeah.
I'm always curious, do those change? You know what I mean? Like, did it start a certain way and then become more harsh? With punitive measures or things like that, or I guess any findings with that?
It's too new to
Sure.
too new to really kind of determine that. But I will tell you from a culture perspective, I would say that karma does come in. Well, just doing the rule followers, let's just go with that. So having exposure to the fact that you're not following the rules, it does provide some incentive just from that particular space.
Okay, yeah, when Sean is not doing stuff like this and pitching VCs, he's likely to be snowboarding when there's snow, or hiking when there's not snow. So we'll give them well, looks like they're almost up here. Let them get set up. Feel free to move up or move around and find a seat if your legs are tired.
Thanks, Chad. I appreciate it. Thanks so much to Coherent for having us, and for Definer and Healy. Really happy to be presenting with you guys. And thank you all for being here today. My name is Sean Fahey, as Chad said, and I'm the founder of WindowMirror. And we're building Butterfly, which is a mobile content creation platform. Switch. So my journey with Butterfly began in 2015 when my aunt Jenny Hart was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And is anybody here touched by an Alzheimer's or other dementia experience? It's a hard journey, and my prayers are with you and your families. I know how it is. We lost Jenny this year to complications from her Alzheimer's. In 2015, however, in talking with Jenny, in learning her stories, this is a 90-year-old woman diagnosed with late-stage Alzheimer's, and I'm catching her in these lucid moments, and she's sharing these beautiful thoughts and memories from her past, but she doesn't have the wherewithal, as soon as she gets a memory, to grab a piece of paper, sit down, and write it down. And if she shorthands something and goes back and looks at it later, it's like hieroglyphics. It doesn't make any sense. And then I'm looking around in the market space, and I'm seeing the heuristics of design are really built for CEOs for dictation, or hospitals for people that are taking dictation. And then the heuristics for social networking are really built around the short-term dopamine trigger effect. So it's all about the like button, sense it, quick reactions. Do you ever really go back and look through your entire history of your Facebook experience and go, wow, I did a really good thing here? Do you guys, I mean, honestly, right? I'm not saying it doesn't exist and it isn't valid for us to be using, because it's part of who we are now as a society. As a matter of fact, I would suggest that it's a spectrum that we exist in, and it is a hue within the spectrum of our being. But what we want Butterfly to be is another hue that doesn't exist, in a different conversation with how we use technology to share our stories, thoughts, memories, and feelings. So again, it started with Alzheimer's and other dementias, and for the past 2 years, I've traveled around to dementia technology and innovation forums through AARP, through the Alzheimer's Association, Dementia Action Alliance, and it's been a beautiful experience going into this bubble and learning from people living with the disease that they need the heuristics of well-being within their technology. They need ease of use. But then it got me thinking, well, beyond their use case, we really all need that. We all seek ease of use. I think we all have app fatigue for things that are difficult to use, or Windows-driven experiences, or things that are really targeted around that dopamine trigger. What's the heuristics of well-being look like? So we started radically changing our idea over the past year, and it went just from dementia to coming up with this idea of, well, ease of use really is speech to text. Ease of use is really letting low-level AI start analyzing and interpreting your speech to text as an asset for you. So the Butterfly protocol works really simply. Using the wake word, hey Butterfly, will engage a speech to text experience where you can save thoughts, memories, stories, ideas, and feelings with your closest loved ones, right? But then beyond that, if you're a singer, you could sing into it. If you're a rapper, you could rap it into it and get rap lyrics. And then what do AI bots look like when you're being creative? If you're a researcher doing a dissertation, what's it look like when you're driving in the car and you're like, oh man, that's the thing. That's the thing about black holes that nobody knows. I just figured it out. What does that look like when you're driving in a car? Hey Butterfly, you can talk for 10 minutes. And the thing that makes it different than like a normal dictation device, and believe me guys, 10 minutes is a long time. If you've ever just sat and tried to talk into your phone for 10 minutes, good luck, right? But what makes it different than any other dictation device, or even using Siri or Google, is we have a closing sentiment. You end this content creation experience by saying, thanks, Butterfly. So then your content will roll into a card slide, which will be enhanced through AI bots that you will be able to get on a decentralized bot store, and I'm going to get to that. And what that means is, and why we're going to go decentralized versus just being an app, is we want to open up this experience as a protocol where users creating content can then find developers who are making really cool low-level AI that they can start creating and refining and redesigning the content any way they want. So there's limitless use case potential at that point. The things that we've isolated specifically are, we see creative and social being really exciting. Like I said, like imagine singing into Butterfly, hey Butterfly, and you sing a song. And then there's an AI bot that is detecting pitch and then just lays out a really simple chord progression for you. And that comes in a wall feed. So it's not the short-term dopamine trigger of a like button from your buddy in France. It's AI going, here's something really cool you haven't thought of. Here's a way to play it, right? Or a rapper rapping into it, and then there's like a low-level AI rhyme bot that's like slamming you with like 5 dope hooks, right? So that's the potential. This is what we can get to quickly. Research and professional, again, it's usually natural language processors, sentiment analysis algorithms, ways to query the web to start citing sources, even like a bot that will just cite sources in the appropriate format for you, right? Health and wellness, this is really about taking a person-centered care approach to your own well-being, where what if you were just talking about your feelings every day into Butterfly, and you have sentiment analysis algorithms tracking how you're talking. Link that up with biometrics that are detecting your heart rate, your blood pressure. What does that look like in the bigger picture? What does that look like when you have a year's worth of data and you go in to see a primary care physician who's seeing 28 patients in a day and has about 12 minutes of time? What does that look like for them? We're going to get there too. We're switching slides, guys, as soon as it moves. App first. What I've just talked about is the app. We're very focused on building this app. We're building on the Microsoft Azure cloud, so we're very much centralized right now because we're focused on the heuristics of well-being. We're focused on getting everyone in here using this technology, liking it, giving us feedback, and letting us be in service to you to make your experience better before we go into a decentralized ecosystem. And Nectar is going to be the currency that's going to fuel that ecosystem. And I talked about this being a hue in the spectrum of your being, the heuristics of well-being. What's really cool is if you exhibit certain traits that, say, 500 other people exhibit, and you're on a specific medication, for example, and somebody creates an AI bot that just wants to comb through hues within the Butterfly ecosystem and says, wow, I found 500 people targeted that are all sharing the exact same symptoms. How valuable is that to a pharmaceutical company? We'll have a liquidity pool. It's a proof of stake model currency with a large liquidity pool. And as soon as they want and they're interested in you because of the defect or the asset that you could be for them, they have to pay you in Nectar. They use a Shifty button, no different than using MetaMask. Shapeshift is how we would be able to take and convert any fiat into our digital currency. So Nectar is what we're going to release in 2019. We're not doing an ICO, but we are toying with the idea of doing a DAICO because we want this entire decentralized ecosystem to be run by a decentralized autonomous organization, or a DAO. So the whole thing is going to be structured through a hierarchy where the machine learning protocol is going to decide when you're executing contracts. Smart contract solutions are all happening off-chain in a Byzantine fault-tolerant and protected, secure layer at scale. We're talking microtransactions happening on-chain. On-chain for us right now, we're looking at the SHA-3 Ketchik, which we're really excited about. It's a NIST award-winning hash algorithm. ERC20s are SHA-256, and they're great too. Bitcoin is potentially something that you could also build smart contract on, which we also like. NEO, like you had talked about, we're also looking into, and of course EOS. Next page. So what do you call a flock of butterfly? Does anybody know? Yay! Get this woman a beer with a ticket, guys, come on. So yes, it is a kaleidoscope, and we are going to create a decentralized bot market called the Kaleidoscope. This is colliding an economy of scope of users and developers in an open market with a protocol that we're going to give to that market that anyone can build on, change, augment as they need. But the important thing is everything happens on-chain. Everything else happens in a smart contract off-chain. Anything that gets into this market is vetted. It's all Apache licensed. It's all on GitHub. It all has to be run through stringent software to make sure that it is secure, there is no spyware, et cetera, right? But it's kind of like Singularity, if you've heard of that. That's sort of like the AI bot market that exists now. We're really wanting to commercialize that, and here's why. And I know I don't have much time. So this is the dApp market, and it's a little bigger than this, but these are the dApps that are in existence right now. Like everybody's running on the Ethereum protocol, right? And dApps are essentially like websites running on the protocol. Who has a dApp in their phone right now? Raise your hand. So one person. Think about that. Okay, the #1 dApp in 2018 is IDEX, which is on the ERC20 platform, and there are 6,000 users. So scalability in these 800 dApps that are in existence is Cambrian. We are in the stone age of this still, and there's so much potential for growth. And you're going to hear a lot of noise this year because there's been an 80% fall off in total market cap for all currencies. don't be scared of the noise. Be wise to the valuable things within the ERC20, EOS, et cetera. The cream's going to rise to at the top, and it's going to be all about who's going to exist in collaborative ecosystem with one another. Those things that are good that we choose to use as the flock that comes out in 2019 are going to ensure success for all. So we're being focused on that, finding our partnerships within the ERC20, NEO, EOS, et cetera, paying attention to the foundations and also paying attention to who's failing and why. Because a lot of people in 2017 and 2018 got a lot of money fast, and then they started thinking, wow, we better find a problem to, to solve, first. They were more about the token than they were about the value proposition. They were creating white papers that became white vapors, and now we're seeing this flight that is bigger than the dot-com crash. But it's okay. There's going to be staying power. There's a lot of great utilities out there, and it's up to us to be able to use them, and we're going to see this value come back in the next 2 years, in my opinion. With that, I want to introduce Vu, who is our new UI designer with me. We initially had a prototype in Java, an Android app.
So login window. Alrighty, this is the home screen, and what we're gonna have people do is click the butterfly icon, and that's gonna pretty much start the voice to text dictation.
On top of being able to do just the wake word. But
Yep.
this
On top of
is-
the wake word, of course.
Essentially, this is what it's going to look like. Imagine if I had 5 instances or 4 instances that I created where I had said, hey, butterfly, and created some content. This is the card that you will display that's showing timestamp, date, and the amount of time per note that you've made. And then the simplicity of this comes into, it's really all about taking it from there to there. And if you hit send, underneath, by the way, this was supposed to be done today, but we had a lot of problems with API calls to our backend with Azure yesterday, making it so we can't show you the full beta. But if I would have clicked the red button, every social networking icon that you have on your phone that you choose to use, if it's Medium, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, it's all existing here. And you can hit the red button and click which one you choose to send it to and publish it, right? But it's really not about publishing first, because we already do that in the heuristics of the short-term dopamine trigger effect, right? What we want to do here is we want to live in a place of content refinement for as long as you want. And it's really about how valuable is this content that you're creating. And it's a different conversation with what content really means to us. So that's one aspect. There's a little, I think there's a... Put it where?
If you just put it on the other side of the screen.
Oh, yeah. Sweet. Good call. And then, so as Vu mentioned, when you hit the butterfly icon, a waveform would come up, which also isn't going to, so there would be there's a symbol for the waveform. The waveform would actually work in the real world. It did 2 days ago. And again, you'd have 10 minutes of talk time. You'd be able to create the content, and you'd be able to send it anywhere you want. I have no more time, guys. This is it. You're great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thanks, guys. There's got to be some questions out there on this one. There's a lot there. Who's got a question?
Speechless.
It's a lot to take in.
Can you talk about the AI middle, like kind of garbage in, garbage out, in terms of how you're going to ascertain like who requires?
Great. So it's all going to be consensus driven. So it's all upvoted, right? Things that come in are, if there's anything that's malicious, for example, it goes through a process of vet where anybody that is part of the ecosystem is going to be able to look into it. The cream rises to the top, no different than like Product Hunt, where things are upvoted. But in order to even be put on the website, it has to be able to be open source, Apache, and to be able to be scrutinized by anybody within the ecosystem. So anybody who's a hard-nosed command liner is going to be able to look in and go, oh man, that's some like buggy code. This is garbage. And then just say it, right? And that's what we want. But if somebody wants to use it at your own risk, I suppose. But I think it's really all about the transparency of open source, free market economy And that's what it means to be able to like peer into everything. Everybody has their GitHub exposed. You can look into this data.
And sorry if I'm misunderstanding, but the value prop is really about getting a lot of data in there and then using that to be able to figure out how you monetize that, how most organizations will deliver us.
That's one example of the value prop, exactly.
Require pretty sophisticated data sets to make sure you're not screwing up what's inside of it. I'm just trying to understand.
Sure. Well, so for example, I'm talking to Utska Pharmaceuticals, who has a new Alzheimer's medication that's on the market. And what they're interested in is really like how person-centered palliative care data can help streamline their efforts to go into phase 3 on something that they're currently in phase 2. When I say phase 3 for a medication, we're talking about $100 million effort at minimum every time. The financialization of medication is a huge market, right? And there's also a lot of oversight built around that. So what can you do with a patient population who's on your medication, who are both tracking their biometrics and talking about their well-being? Does that help you? And they think it does. So that would be an example. Does that help? Okay, thanks.
So it seems if you have those AI idea, oh, by the way, I really love it. It's great, right, awesome. And then there may be the bandwidth, the performance issue, because it's kind of full text, whatever, content search and global search. Currently, blockchain does not offer that typically, because it's not built for that purpose.
Yeah, so that's why we're a DApp and not living on the blockchain, because the more you put on the blockchain, the gummier and slower it gets. ERC20 tokens that are existing right now have dApps that exist to help alleviate all of the weight that they put in their on-chain solutions. On-chain for us is transaction only. So that's our monetization model. That's the fungibility. That's the data shared information all can happen off-chain. You just need to account for it on-chain. So having a Byzantine fault-tolerant and secure off-chain solution that scales at microtransaction level is key. So that's where we're focused.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks about her. It is time to give patients complete multi-level control over a valuable commodity, their healthcare data. Lynn's going to show us how she proposes to do that. When Lynn isn't telling a lot of people how she's going to do that, she is a beekeeper. Please welcome Lynn Smith of Healy.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Oh, I thought that started. Spinny pinwheel, it's what you always want to start your presentations with. I know if I hit the button again, it'll, turn it off. So I'll just start talking a little bit about Healy. So Healy is in healthcare, and Healy is all about patient communities, patients themselves, and patient data. So what the Healy project is working on a platform and then that sits on top of blockchain and really focuses on a protocol. But I just wanted to start off with a slide that talks a little bit about the fact that there's two parts to the project, and that actually should be blockchain protocol, but let me see here. So blockchain protocol layers. This is a really important part of the emerging blockchain space, is the idea that, in the early days of the internet, we had TCP/IP and a lot of other different protocols that helped different systems really standardize and communicate well between themselves. And in blockchain, we now have all these blockchains that are growing and different blockchain efforts, whether they're public blockchains, private blockchains, that sort of thing. And we're starting to see companies that are saying, even no matter what you're building on what blockchain, we have to really start to standardize how we're going to share information. So if you see a future world where different blockchains are running decentralized applications, and based on people's needs, they really need to have the information structured in a similar way. That's sort of what a blockchain protocol is. So I have a diagram here talking about an example of one blockchain, which is Ethereum. So Ethereum right now has many, many different projects that are starting protocols for different things. One of my favorite actually is Foam. So here's an effort that is actually setting up radio beacons around the world and then letting people do decentralized pinging of those radio beacons to establish location. So if you think about right now, when you use your phone and GPS, there's a whole setup system of how you can verify your location. So Foam is making a totally new way for people to verify more securely where their location is. So that's an example of a blockchain protocol. And Foam will be on a whole bunch of different blockchains, but what they're basically doing is saying they want to approach the idea of location in a completely new way from how we do it with our centralized companies like Apple and Android that ping GPS. So there is no blockchain for patient data. And there's no protocol, there's no blockchain protocol for it. So Healy's core effort, although it is platform on top and we are building a D app and we're doing all that, a whole bunch of different things there, our basic thing is saying, patients themselves, they need their own data protocols. Like we need to be able to figure out a way for a patient to say, hey, this is my data here. It might be on a chain somewhere else. It might be, organized or structured somewhere else within chains, but how do we make the patient themselves the decentralization point with blockchain going forward? So if you think about patient data, right now, the paradigm is very medical system. And within our medical systems, which are very siloed, you might have EMRs that start to talk to each other or share data between them, and there's sort of big efforts between these centralized companies in order to share information. But what if in this new decentralized blockchain space, we really thought about patients, and actually doctors and researchers too, but at a core, patients as the central sovereign point of how we collect data and how we structure data. So with Healy, a person could have an application where they start to collect their symptoms, their treatments, medical test results, a lot of stuff that you might find in an EMR, but the data is actually structured more for the patient themselves. And having a patient build their own lifelong health record where they're able to say to different systems, I want to have control over who sees my data when, who gets access to what level of that data, and then allow different decentralized application companies to come in and really serve the needs of patient communities. You might want to have a very specialized report I get migraines, so when I go to see migraine doctors, I might want a one sheet that I pass out that's very specific to that. Right now, all the time, you see patients with chronic conditions showing up at doctors and explaining the same exact information over and over and over again. And you actually see all these patients often having written out a one sheet on Word, a Word doc of sort of their own patient data. So the Healy idea is to try to take a minute and back away from the medical system, which we all love, and that's great, but then look at the patient themselves as the central point, and how do we build a system around that? So this can lead to things like systems where once you have a patient that owns their own data, imagine them coming together in a community and saying, I want to share my data with other people in the patient community and start to get population insights for myself based on my own very specific condition. So you could have applications where they go and search. Imagine just getting off a plane flight and getting a migraine and being able to go into an application and saying, people with a similar migraine profile to me who have maybe had the same treatments or live in the same area of the country or whatever variables you want to pick in with the data, what's the most effective treatment when somebody has gotten a migraine coming off a plane flight, right? So that would be the kind of thing that a patient would really want, but we really don't see applications that try to address that problem coming out of the current medical system, because it's a little bit more focused on, the needs of the medical system itself. So now imagine that data set as it grows and as patient communities are really talking to each other and people are getting really excited to gather information from disparate systems and bring all their own information in to be able to do their own analytics, you can start having researchers come in and maybe start to do some of what we call secondary research, where they might not be doing, in the beginning, clinical trials on it, but they can go in and use that data set, again, with the permission of the patients, to better understand the people that they want to do research on. And within Healy, one of the decentralized applications we want to put on top of this is allowing researchers to actually go into pools of people and do surveys if they want to. So a lot of these orphan conditions, we actually see populations now where they're like growing huge Facebook groups of 50,000 people who are just trying as patients to band together and get like a researcher to pay attention to their specific condition. So this might be a way where you could start looking at systems that are decentralized, where when patients actually own their own data, they can monetize it and they can come together as a community and start funding research themselves. So we've talked a little bit actually with Sean's presentation about how much money there is right now into medical data, so I won't go into that too much, but if you have the patients actually owning their own data and you give them a tool within a community, and this is a big part of the smart contracts we're writing, is to be able to, as a community, pull that data together and offer it up for data sales. I mean, even say if people allow it and they want to, maybe they can get offers from pharmaceutical companies, but that money goes into a pool that runs the ecosystem, but then also allows the community to vote up, not only patients, but doctors and researchers, what research and tools are important to them. All right, so as patients investigate their own health and share with other patients, they're gonna gather a lot of data. And it's a different kind of decentralization. So one thing I get a question about a lot with the Healy vision is how this is different than other medical chains. So almost all the major health systems right now have announced different chains that they're going to be working with. Like the Mayo Clinic's going to be working with medical chain itself, which is my favorite privatized medical effort so far. If you think of that as like a private blockchain, so what you're doing is you're saying in a centralized organization, they're increasing security, they're increasing efficiency, and they're really within the Mayo Clinic or whatever health system that is, really helping themselves be a better organization, which is awesome. With a public blockchain, and what I'm trying to do with this protocol that it goes around different blockchains and really points at the patient is I'm saying that we need to have a standardization that actually becomes sort of the glue and the concrete in between those different systems. So I see Healy and what we're building as something that actually is very a philosophy of pointers, right? So if somebody starts to come in and build their lifelong health record, they might have apps they like to collect data on, their Fitbit, their Clue, whatever apps they like to develop it on. There's a developer API that lets them pull in information. And then the Healy app itself has some of the tools around analytics and further personal data collection. But it also points, everybody in the US and actually globally, but the US law, everybody owns their own data. And a lot of people don't know that they actually do own their own medical data. This can point into different systems and help people build a lifelong health record of exactly where all their records are, and even pull them into this chain protocol if they want to. So, one of the things that people get really excited about as well when I talk about this is just doctors having a better, more accurate record of what really happened with a patient. So I work with this really wonderful advisor of mine over at Harvard Medical School, Dr. Pold, and we just have constant conversations about how right now it doesn't matter what EMR you're on, what medical system you're in. When you go to meet with a patient and look at them, you're getting like 10% of the information, right? So we see Healy as something that sits beside an EMR, right? We're not trying to replace an electronic medical record system yet, but we are going after the idea of doctors and pharmacists and other people who are just wanting to have a much clearer view of the patient. So yeah, clearer view of the patient, collecting different information. So one of the ways I think is really interesting with a public blockchain is when you're starting to get into the question of how it works economically. So when you talk about decentralized economics, it really comes down to right now, like your private medical data is for sale for billions of dollars a year. And when you think about the data that's collected by these companies that go around to different medical systems, pharmacies, and they kind of aggregate data together, what they typically do is they put a patient data tag on that. And we know for sure now, and it's been, just proven over and over again, that it's not very secure, right? So like there's one example where the governor of Massachusetts, William Weld, went to the doctor a couple of years ago, and somebody was actually able to go into some of these databases and just reveal pretty much all of his medical records simply by knowing like what day and time he was going to the doctor. So there's very low security on our current secondary medical data market. And then as well as that, when people do try to pull that in for research, it's not very verified data, right? So they think they've tagged the right person between systems, but they often don't really know. So when you talk to researchers and you say, hey, we're building a data set here where patients have come in and they themselves, the central point of care, they themselves have said, this is me, I've pulled this information in. And not only can you tell that I got prescribed a drug, but you can tell how often, like if they track it, if they choose to track it, like how, when they actually took it, maybe you could even tell with a lot of the migraine patients I work with, they track exactly how well their different treatments are working because they want that information for themselves, right? So you start to build these data sets that are richer and actually much more valuable to researchers. So to take a jump back, Migraine Insight. So I actually developed a migraine app, and it's in the store. It's a 5-star app right now. And this is what started me on the path of Healy. So this whole idea of patient data and how we collect patient data is very personal to me, having gone through a journey myself as somebody with migraines who spent 10 years going to different neurologists and trying to figure out what was causing and triggering my pain. And just knowing as actually a data analytics background, so I have a technical background, like they were just simply collecting the wrong data on paper. Like to this day, if you go to a neurologist, they tell you more or less to track on paper, like what your migraine triggers are. So as I'm in the early stages of Healy here, I think it's just an important thing to know sort of where the Healy vision came from, which was originally kind of working with migraine patients. And we're expanding to different conditions and renaming the company to Healy from Migraine Insight. So the vision and the roadmap for the app is to expand it to other conditions and then do all the decentralized application framework or the foundation by making that blockchain protocol layer. So right now I'm working with a founding member and growing the team. So working with a couple different advisors as well. And one last thought I'll leave you with. I know it's been kind of a long night, so I probably won't take my full 10 minutes, but there's a guy, Clayton Christensen, out of Harvard, who is an economist who gathered a whole team of other economists, and for 8 years they studied the American medical system with an eye to trying to figure out how to sort of fix it. Like I think we all know how broken things are right now economically. Like we have all these good people in medicine who are trying to help patients, but the economics are really getting in the way. And one of Clayton Christensen's big points that he makes in his book, The Innovator's Prescription, is that we actually do have enough medical services in the United States to care for every patient that needs care. And that people are dying because they're being denied care that's available to them. A big motivation for me with Healy is to try to change the economics of the healthcare system, even just a little bit. I mean, if you can start to give patients and doctors actual economic power because they own their own data, and they can start influencing and having research that's done that's important to them, and tools, and even just a little bit more power in the system, I think we have a much better balance on how to move forward. And Clayton also, like his main thesis coming out of this 8-year study of the American system was that whatever comes to truly change it is going to come from the outside, just because the nature of siloed systems and centralized systems versus decentralized. So I run the Blockchain for Good meetup here in Minneapolis, and I couldn't not mention that as I presented tonight. So we meet and we talk about technical things, and yeah, I have a couple people here who come to that. It's a really fun meetup over in the Minneapolis Impact Hub. And then I wanted to take a minute just to also say thank you so much to Coherent. Like, Coherent's one of those companies that has just been in Minneapolis for a very long time and making, just doing impressive work. Everywhere I go, it's like I hear about Coherent having these amazing projects. And so for you guys to really pick up the banner and start in on this blockchain stuff, I think it's amazing. Thank you.
That was awesome. Sean.
Thanks so much, Lynn. That was awesome. I had a question about how the ecosystem works based on something that you said that I thought was really appealing. Essentially, you exist, Healy, as a platform where, say, the top 10 incurable diseases, you had hundreds of people from each of the top 10 come in. Are they able to tokenize on top of your platform? Is that what that looks like as like collective bargaining, or how would you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so the idea with Healy actually is, I love the philosophy of a decentralized autonomous organization. And so yes, the Healy token is the vision here, is to tokenize people, let people tokenize their medical data and really be able to sell it. But I actually worked into the way that the Healy token will work is that when you set up a data pool, and anybody can set up a data pool, so if you're a migraine patient, you can set it up. People can choose, there's a whole bunch of different governance structures projects, and again, one of my philosophies with Healy is to be a connector. Like, we don't want to solve the problems that a lot of these other smart blockchains are solving, but allowing people to choose their own governance structure based on the data pool. So no matter what you want to do with your data, like, let's just say that you're a big fan of kind of ranked choice voting, or for some reason, and you want to contribute to a migraine pool where 100% of the money that comes in when the data is sold to researchers or other avenues involved in a software as a service, DApp, that sort of thing. But when your data is used, the money comes in, you want to give 100% of it to migraine research, and you want to use ranked choice voting in order to, once a year have the community decide what research is going to be funded. That could be one type of pool. Somebody else could set up a pool where it's actually like governed by an individual, and most people would probably find that shady and not join that pool. Or I could name 100 different, governance structures you can have. Or you could set up a pool where you're like, we're going to keep the money and take it home as a paycheck, and then 10% of it will go into some sort of community fund, or zero. But you let the communities themselves have actually sort of a competitive way. And if you could join multiple pools, all the better. So then the people coming in to use the data pools, whether it be secondary market research, selling, they can sort of pick which pool fits their needs the best too. So sort of free market. Yeah.
Okay, let's get two more really good questions. Or that can be bad. No. All right. Two more questions. Come on. Pretty big use case, yes.
Have you looked at how publishing your medical records to a blockchain conforms with HIPAA regulations? Is that a problem at all?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Blockchains are very secure and very good for applications that want to be HIPAA compliant, GDPR compliant. I mean, based on the way you set them up, they could or they couldn't be, but it's a well-worn path in order to do that. One of the larger questions that come up with HIPAA is actually not the blockchain itself, but the applications that are running on top of it, because it's harder to keep, the 6 points of ePHI compliance within HIPAA. So that's not a point that we've actually, as a company, crossed the bridge on yet. And there are actually a couple really exciting projects coming out that are doing sort of installable HIPAA compliance on decentralized applications. So yes, on the blockchain, HIPAA, GDPR, great. My bigger concern is actually the decentralized application sitting on top. Yeah.
One more? Got time for one more. Okay, that's all right. Please, Lynn, thank you so much.
We're going to spend really about 10 minutes each group, so we're going to spend a lot of time on the slides, but we'll set a little bit of context in terms of what our use cases and how our team got formed a little bit, and then we'll show you kind of where we're at development-wise. Because we're not going live market yet, planning on doing that in about December of this year, so not too long away. But making good progress. We're actually releasing our awesome version later this month. Also, to just have a couple resources on the entry slide here. If you guys are interested, all staying connected with us would be great. Reach our website is www.define.org, and we also are pretty active on our blog, which is on Medium. And it's a good place to just get updates on our progress, our team, and then try to stay updated in terms of blockchain to see all the progress that's happening there. Alright, so we as a team, with our mission statement, because we're all really passionate about blockchain, but we all have different backgrounds. And our mission statement is to advance financial trust, growth, and simplicity through the blockchain. And we intend on doing that in the category of lending and finance, which we think is a really compelling use case in today's environment and also moving forward. And our team started with just a handful of us, 3 or 4 back in March, but now we've grown to over 14, which is exciting for us to see other people are interested as well and see value in what we're trying to do. We actually have some team members outside of the U.S. We have 2 in China and 1 also in Canada, but our core team is located here in Minneapolis. So, real quick on our use case, I said our category for product is lending and finance, but I think it's important to spend a moment touching on blockchain lending and why it is something valuable today that we believe can actually solve, also be useful based on the current environment. So the thing that we're looking at is there's a accelerating demand for digital assets, as a lot of people here know. That's almost an exponential type of growth. But there's also a lot of pain with the traditional system in place now when it comes to lending and finance. So we think blockchain lending is something that, while there's still a lot of development needed to make it mainstream, it's something that definitely can fill a market need right now. So looking at the demand for digital asset side, there's over 2,000 different cryptocurrencies that exist today. While the market is now, which some of you may know, it's still over 200 billion worldwide, and projected to be higher than that. And not just in currencies, but also different types of assets, anywhere from securities to bonds, real estate, and physical assets. We think the demand is only going to continue to grow in this space. On the lending side, it's all about decentralization. Thinking about traditional banking and the types of options that exist today, there's a lot of pain involved with that, right? Whether it's fees or time-consuming process, credit checks, lack of trust, custodianship. Blockchain can remove all those types of pain points and figure out people's ability to transact with each other across the world in whichever assets they choose. And we want to support as many of those as possible. So just a couple of quick features about our platform, and we'll go through this obviously in the demo too, but some of the ways we're trying to differentiate ourselves, because there are some solutions today that exist that are trying to fill this need as well. But blockchain lending. Obviously there's different blockchains that exist today. Ethereum, Neo, EOS is to name a few. Each of those have different smart contract architecture, and we built our platform to support that entire environment. So we're in a market with Ethereum, ERC20, we'll have a token, but we want to be able to pivot and be flexible, move in the direction that the market's going. So we're designing our system to be very user-friendly, accessible 24/7, and we want to support as many different types of assets as possible. Because the idea
Barry Wang, who is sit over there, and just to come and say hi and talk to him. Also, we have China as our director of public relationship. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
2 questions. One is that you're lending USD, is that right? It is crypto to crypto. Okay, I saw the USD on there, so I needed to ask. Okay, so and that makes more sense. And then let's see. I lost my second question. Shoot, somebody else can go. Yeah.
Crypto, we led crypto to crypto, but as now more and more stable coins, like Gemini, they launched their own US dollar token, right? Basically, that's the part of the digitalization of fiat currency. Yeah, so we can lend the fiat currency based.
And I thought of my second question. Is it both retail and institutional investors that will be the borrowers?
So they can either be the borrower or the lender, and people, whoever now you have your digital asset, you can come to our platform to lend it out and earn some passive income. Or if you want to borrow, you can borrow from others, but it's truly people to people. Yeah.
Pooling option too.
Yeah, and also we are kind of act as like current bank. We can pool the different funds from different lenders together and lend it out if the loan amount is too high and one single lender cannot fulfill it. But we are not in between. Actually, even the platform users still use the platform, but we are not going to control any fund people put it there. The blockchain will control that. Yeah.
Question for you.
Yeah.
So what's the primary lending format? Is it in Bitcoin? Is it what's the currency that's given for the investment?
Typically, we use the first blockchain we launched is Ethereum, so we use Ether. Okay. But now, Gemini, they have their GUSD, we have USDT, have TUSD, but it's in a very early stage. In the future, we imagine every central bank will issue their own cryptocurrency, but it's a fiat cryptocurrency, but it's only a different format of currency. It's no different with your US dollar or euro you own, but it's in a digitalized format. So then we can lend the digital fiat currency as well. Yeah. But now majorly is based on Ether. Yeah.
Good. One more quick one.
So I can speak really loud. So can you talk about data privacy, who would have access to the data, how you resolve a dispute or a default? You mentioned, are you using off-chain to validate that the asset is real? Like how are you kind of handling if I'm untruthful in declaring my assets, how are you validating that that's real?
So first question about the data privacy. So as you can see, the only information we ask from the user is the email address. So for other information, we do not store the sensitive information. It's all public on the blockchain, but encrypted. So in that way, it's very secure. As you know, Bitcoin launched almost 10 years ago. It's very secure platform to provide the data privacy. Yeah. So for the dispute, it's truly based on the smart contract. And before people, lender and the user reach an agreement, and we are not going to deploy the smart contract on the blockchain. So we do not foresee they have dispute because that's what they really agreed on. Yeah. All right. Thank you guys, and just stop by and talk to us. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Good job. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. All right. Before we all run to the bar, okay, please scan the QR code if you haven't already and take a 5-minute survey, please. We want to do these again. We want to do them better next time. Thank you very much. Let's give a big round of applause to everyone that participated. Let's start collaborating. Let's get together and make it happen. Thank you.